A lone rancher lost everything when a powerful senator's greed turned his life to ash. For years, Senator Howard silenced anyone who stood in his way, leaving trails of ruined lives behind. But when a desperate woman collapsed at the rancher's doorstep, fate gave him one last chance to fight back. And the way this battle for justice unfolded will leave you breathless until the very end.
For 11 years, the wind was the only sound that answered Jonathan Hale's voice. But in truth, he hadn't spoken at all. His ranch, Fire River, lay hidden miles from the nearest road, surrounded by endless stretches of dust and dry grass that shimmered under the Texas sun. Locals in the nearest town called him a ghost, a shadow of the man he used to be, a soldier turned rancher who simply disappeared. Every morning he followed the same ritual: rise before dawn, check the fence line, feed the horses, chop wood, work until his muscles burned, because labor was the only thing strong enough to silence the memories clawing at his mind. He didn't keep a calendar. He didn't need one. Time had stopped for him the day his world burned to ash. That morning, though, something broke the rhythm. As the first light of day spread across the horizon, he saw movement near the edge of his land. At first, he thought it was an animal, maybe a stray coyote or one of the wild mustangs that sometimes wandered close. But then he saw her, a woman. She was staggering, her clothes torn, her steps uneven, like she had walked for miles with no food or water. Dirt streaked her face, and there was a cut on her leg that left a faint trail in the sand behind her. For a brief moment, Jonathan thought he was hallucinating, a figure out of the desert heat. Then she collapsed. Jonathan didn't move at first. His instincts told him to stay out of it. People meant trouble. He learned that the hard way. But as he stood there, watching her fragile body crumpled on the ground, something deep within him stirred. A flicker of memory. The way his daughter used to cling to him when she was scared. The smell of his wife's hair in the morning. He stepped forward. The sound of his boots crunching the dry soil seemed deafening in the silence. Kneeling beside her, he saw her lips moving, a faint whisper. "My name, Claire." Her eyes fluttered shut. Jonathan looked toward the horizon, scanning for any sign of who or what had driven her to this place. But there was nothing, just empty land and a sky so wide it felt like it could swallow them both whole. For the first time in over a decade, he spoke aloud. His voice was hoarse from disuse, rough like gravel. "You're safe here." But even as he said it, Jonathan wasn't sure he believed it himself. Claire woke to the faint smell of coffee and the soft creak of old floorboards. Her eyelids felt heavy, her body sore, as if every muscle protested against movement. For a moment, she didn't know where she was. Then she saw the wooden beams above her, the faint flicker of a lantern against the walls, and the unmistakable scent of leather and earth. The ranch. The man. She tried to sit up, but winced at the sharp pain in her leg. It was bandaged neatly. Someone had cleaned the wound and wrapped it with care. Her breath hitched as memories of her journey flashed, long nights walking under cold skies, fear gripping her with every sound behind her. She wasn't safe, not really. Then she heard footsteps. Jonathan appeared in the doorway, tall and broad-shouldered, his hat casting a shadow over eyes that seemed carved from stone. In his hands, he carried a steaming mug and a bowl of soup. He placed them gently on the nightstand without a word. "You've been out for 2 days," he said finally. His voice was low, measured, as if each word had been weighed before leaving his lips. Claire blinked. You saved me?" Jonathan didn't answer. He pulled up a chair and sat, his gaze steady but not unkind. "Who's looking for you?" he asked. Claire hesitated. She had spent weeks running, never daring to speak her story aloud. But something in his calm, unflinching presence made her believe he wasn't the type to run to the authorities, or worse. "I was a doctor," she began, her voice barely above a whisper. "I worked in Los Angeles. There was a patient. A high-profile case. He died during surgery. It wasn't my fault, but his family, they blamed me. Jonathan's jaw tightened slightly. Claire didn't notice. She stared down at her hands, trembling. They made me the scapegoat. The media tore me apart. I lost my license, my home. Then, things got worse. I started receiving threats. Strange cars parked outside my apartment. People following me at night. I had to leave before they found a way to silence me completely. Jonathan's eyes darkened. Who? His voice was barely more than a growl. Senator Howard, Claire said, the name tasting like ash. He's powerful, untouchable.
For the first time, Jonathan looked away, his hand curling into a fist. The name wasn't new to him. It was a name he had buried deep with all the others, ghosts of a life stolen from him. He remembered the night fire consumed his home. He remembered standing helplessly as his wife screamed his name, the flames too high, the heat too fierce. And he remembered the cold handshake of Senator Howard weeks before, when he refused to sell the family ranch to make way for the oil company's expansion. That handshake had been a warning. The fire had been the consequence. Claire's voice pulled him back. I don't know where else to go. I thought maybe if I kept moving. Jonathan stood abruptly. His chair scraped against the wooden floor. Claire flinched, but his expression didn't show anger, only resolve. You should rest, he said. You're safe for now. As he walked out, Claire noticed his hand linger on the doorknob for a moment too long, as if he wanted to say something more but couldn't find the words. When the door closed, she let out a shaky breath. Alone in the dim light, she wondered what kind of man had taken her in. A recluse? A savior? Or someone with demons darker than her own? Outside, Jonathan stepped into the cool evening air. He looked out across the fields toward the distant hills, where the sun was bleeding into the horizon. His chest tightened as old memories clawed their way to the surface. Howard. The man had taken everything from him once, and now he was hunting this woman too. Jonathan Hale wasn't sure if he was ready to confront the past, but deep down he knew he couldn't let it happen again. Not this time. The days on the ranch grew heavier, not from work, but from the weight of unspoken plans. Jonathan had agreed to teach Claire, not because he believed she could fight, but because he saw the same stubbornness in her eyes that once burned in his own. At sunrise, she gripped the reins of a restless horse. Her hands blistered, her legs ached, but she refused to stop. Jonathan watched silently, correcting her posture with curt nods. By midday, he handed her an old rifle. Steady your breath. Don't pull. Squeeze. The first shots missed, but by nightfall, a tin can tumbled from the fence, and a faint smile crossed her face. Around the fire that evening, Claire broke the silence. Howard won't stop unless someone makes him. Jonathan stared into the flames, his jaw tight. Justice isn't given, it's taken. The next morning, he opened a weathered locker in the barn. Inside lay remnants of another life, maps, gear, and a phone he hadn't touched in years. He dialed a number. "Hale, thought you were dead," said a gruff voice. "Not yet," Jonathan replied. "I need a team." As he hung up, Claire stepped closer. "What now?" "Now we stop hiding," Jonathan said, his voice calm but cold. Beyond the hills, Senator Howard lived untouched, but Jonathan Hale was no longer a ghost. He was preparing to return. The city was a sharp contrast to the endless silence of the ranch. Jonathan parked the old truck near the courthouse, hands gripping the wheel. Claire sat beside him, her face pale but steady. "Are you sure about this?" she asked. His eyes stayed fixed ahead. "It's the only way." Inside, Senator Howard sat surrounded by lawyers, his expression calm, almost bored. Jonathan's boots echoed loudly as he crossed the courtroom, stopping in front of the prosecutor. He dropped a thick folder of evidence onto the desk. "Everything you need is here. Make it count."
The trial hit like a storm. One by one, Howard's secrets spilled into the open. Fraud, threats, connections to old fires. His confidence cracked as the walls closed in. When it was over, Claire and Jonathan stood outside as reporters shouted and cameras flashed. She looked at him with quiet gratitude. "You didn't just bring him down, you gave me my life back." Jonathan's voice was low but certain. "We gave it back to each other." Weeks later, back at the ranch, the air felt lighter. Horses grazed peacefully. Claire leaned against the porch rail, watching Jonathan repair the fence. "You're staying?" she asked. He glanced at her, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "Depends. Are you?" She nodded. "I think I already have." For the first time in 11 years, Jonathan Hale felt at peace.